The envelope was sitting on my desk when I walked in that Monday morning. Not handed to me. Not explained. Just sitting there, propped against my coffee mug like it had been waiting all weekend. I knew what it was before I touched it. You spend 22 years working in federal contract compliance. You learn to read a room. And the room that morning, the way my assistant wouldn't make eye contact. The way two guys from HR were hovering near the copy machine pretending to be interested in the toner, told me everything I needed to know. I picked it up. Set it back down. Poured my coffee first. My name is Warren Holt. I'm 53 years old. I served 8 years in the Army Corps of Engineers before I ever set foot in a private sector office. And one thing the Army teaches you, one thing that never leaves, is that you don't let anyone see your hands shake. My hands didn't shake. The letter was 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph said the company was restructuring its senior compliance division to align with evolving operational priorities. The second paragraph told me my last day was Friday and that HR would reach out regarding my separation package. That was it. 22 years. 2 paragraphs. I folded the letter, put it in my jacket pocket, and walked down the hall to my boss's office. His name was Caldwell. Regional VP. Been in the role about 14 months. Came from a background in sales, not operations. The kind of guy who talked about lean teams and right-sizing in every quarterly meeting. He'd never once asked me to walk him through how federal procurement compliance actually worked. He'd never had to. That was my job. I knocked on his open door. He looked up from his laptop. "Warren," he said, not surprised, prepared. "I got the letter," I said. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. I didn't sit. "I think you know this wasn't easy," he started. "I know your salary is $400,000 a year," I said, "and I know 9 is 160. I also know we're currently in the middle of 3 active federal audits and 2 pending contract renewals with the Department of Defense." He blinked. "So I'd like to understand," I said. "Who exactly is going to handle those?" He told me the plan was to redistribute my workload across the existing team, bring in a junior consultant to cover the transition, modernize the documentation systems with new software. I nodded slowly. "The YASHD renewal," I said. "Contract 7741 Bravo. You know who the contracting officer on that is?" He didn't. "His name is Superintendent Decker. He's been my point of contact for 9 years. He does not work with people he doesn't know, and I am the only person in this building who has his direct line, his email, and his signature on the compliance protocol addendum we negotiated in 2019. I paused. That addendum, by the way, is what allows us to operate under a modified reporting schedule. Without it, we'd owe quarterly filings that would take your lean team about 8 months to reconstruct. Caldwell said nothing. "How long is the consultant's onboarding?" I asked. "We were thinking 60 days. Contract 7741 Bravo renewal window closes in 31 days. I said, "Have a good morning." I walked back to my office, sat down, and started making a list. Here's what most people don't understand about federal contract compliance. It is not a spreadsheet job. It is a relationships job. The paperwork matters, yes. Every form, every deadline, every cross-referenced regulation matters. But what keeps a $260 million government contract alive is not software. It is trust. It is a contracting officer who picks up when you call. It is a procurement officer who flags you before she flags the auditors. It is 22 years of goodwill, built one quiet phone call at a time. I had built all of it. Caldwell had no idea any of it existed. That's not an accident. That's what happens when a company treats compliance as overhead instead of infrastructure. They see the cost. They never see the load-bearing wall. I was the load-bearing wall. My wife, Renee, was home when I pulled into the driveway that evening. She's a physical therapist, works long shifts. She was still in her scrubs, standing in the kitchen making dinner, and she looked at my face and immediately turned off the stove. "Tell me," she said. I told her. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "Okay, what do we need to do?" That's Renee, 26 years married, and she has never once asked me to panic with her. She finds out what we need to do. What we needed to do was significant. Our oldest, Marcus, wait no. I should say, our son was a junior at Penn State. Tuition, room and board. Our daughter was a sophomore in high school, 2 years away from college applications. My mother-in-law was living with us, 74 years old, on a fixed income, with 2 prescriptions that cost $900 a month after Medicare. Renee's benefits covered her meds. My benefits covered the gap the plan didn't. My separation package was 4 months of salary. That's it. No extended benefits. No COBRA subsidy. 4 months. I sat at my kitchen table that night and did the math on a legal pad. The number at the bottom wasn't good. Then I opened my laptop and started doing a different kind of math. The next morning, I did not drive to the office. I drove to a diner on Route 9 where I'd been having breakfast every other Tuesday for the past 7 years with a man named Superintendent Decker. He retires next spring. He has 34 years with the federal government. He drinks black coffee and he does not trust email for anything he actually cares about. He was already in the booth when I got there. "Heard something," he said before I even sat down. "Then you heard right," I said. He pushed a coffee toward me. "What's your timeline?" "Friday's my last day officially, but I'm already gone functionally." He looked at me over the rim of his mug. "The renewal. 31 days. He set the mug down. "Warren, I cannot work with someone I don't know on 7741 Bravo. I've told my people that. The protocol addendum requires a designated compliance officer with continuity documentation. That's you. That's been you since the addendum was written." "I know," I said. "Does your company know that?" "They know what I told them yesterday," I said. I don't think they believed me. He was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I picked up my coffee. "I'm going to be very, very patient." Here's what I did in the next 10 days. First, I completed every task I was currently responsible for that could be completed before Friday. I did not leave loose ends. I was not going to give anyone the opportunity to say I had acted in bad faith. Second, I compiled 22 years of institutional documentation, everything I was legally entitled to take into a personal archive. Every email I'd sent from my personal address on company business, every note I typed into my own devices, every contact in my personal phone. None of it was proprietary. All of it was mine. Third, I reached out to 2 former colleagues who had started a boutique compliance consultancy 3 years ago. Their names were Barton and Yee. They'd been after me to join them for 2 of those 3 years. I asked them to lunch. Fourth, I waited. My last day was a Friday. There was no goodbye lunch. There was no card. One woman from the 2nd floor, we'd worked next to each other for 11 years, stopped by my door and said she was sorry. I thanked her. I carried 1 box to my car. I drove home. That night my daughter made pasta and my mother-in-law asked why I was home early, and I told her I had switched jobs, and she said, "Oh, how wonderful, are you happy?" And I said, "I'm getting there." My wife found me on the back porch at 11 o'clock. Sat down next to me without saying anything. After a while she said, "They don't know what they just did, do they?" "Not yet," I said. Day 9 after my last day. Caldwell called my cell phone. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. Very professional, very calm. He said they were experiencing some communications challenges with the DoD contact and wanted to know if I might be available for a brief consulting call. He said he was sure we could come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. I listened to the voicemail twice. Then I texted Barton, "How's the office space?" He wrote back in 30 seconds. "Ready when you are." I want to be honest about something. There was a part of me, a real part, not a small part, that wanted to call Caldwell back immediately. Not to help him. To hear how desperate he sounded up close. I didn't do that. My father spent 30 years as a union electrician. He used to say, "Don't be in the room when they figure out they need you. Make them come find you." He said it about negotiations. He said it about raises. He said it about life in general. I thought about him a lot that week. On day 14, the call came from someone I didn't expect. It wasn't Caldwell. It was the company's general counsel, a woman named Ms. Hartley. I'd spoken to her exactly twice in 22 years. Her voice was very controlled. She said the company was facing a compliance continuity concern related to contract 7741 Bravo, and would like to discuss options. She used the phrase compliance continuity concern 4 times in the first 2 minutes. I counted. I told her I was currently in the process of establishing a new consultancy and would need to review any engagement through that structure. She asked how long that would take. I said, "What's the current status of the renewal window?" Silence. 17 days. "Then I'd say we have some urgency," I said. "I'll have my business partners reach out to schedule a formal meeting." I hung up and called Barton. "We have a client," I said. The meeting was at their offices, not mine. That was the first condition. The second condition was that the engagement would be contracted through Barton Yee Compliance Group, my new employer, as of 2 days prior, and billed at our standard federal contract advisory rate of $340 per hour. For context, my previous annual salary worked out to roughly $77 per hour. Caldwell was in the meeting. He looked like a man who had not been sleeping well. Ms. Hartley was there, and 2 people from their operations team I'd never seen before. They had a list of issues. The list was long. The root cause of every single item on the list was the same: institutional knowledge that lived in my head and nowhere else, because no one had ever thought to ask me to document it. I didn't say that out loud. I just worked through the list. By item 7, Caldwell asked, would it be possible to have a more permanent arrangement? Something ongoing? I looked at Barton. He nodded slightly. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Here is what I want to say about the next 3 weeks. Because I want to be fair, the company was not evil. Caldwell was not a villain. He was a man who had been given a budget problem and told to fix it, and he fixed it the way a lot of people fix budget problems, by looking at the line items and cutting the ones that seemed high. He cut me because I seemed high. He had no idea what I actually did. That's the real story. Not that I was wronged by monsters, that I was cut by people who didn't understand what they were cutting, because I had spent 22 years making what I did look effortless. When something looks effortless, it looks optional. Lesson learned. By both of us, probably. The retainer contract we negotiated was for 18 months. Monthly rate, $22,000. Billed through Barton Yee. I take 60%. That is more than my previous annual salary, paid monthly, with no benefits overhead on their side and full consulting firm benefits on mine. Which meant Renee's mother's prescriptions were covered under our group plan within 30 days. I also negotiated, as a condition of engagement, that my name be formally credited in the compliance methodology documentation filed with the DoD renewal. Not legally required. Non-negotiable for me. Caldwell's team sent the revised documentation 3 days before the renewal window closed. Superintendent Decker signed off on renewal of contract 7741 Bravo on a Tuesday afternoon. He called me that evening. "Done," he said. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you," he said. "Don't ever retire before me." My daughter was at the kitchen table doing homework when I got off the phone. She asked who called. "Work," I said. "Are you good?" she said, not looking up. "Yeah," I said. "I think so." She said, "Dad, you've been weirdly calm for like 6 weeks. It's kind of unsettling." I laughed. "Is it like you got fired and you didn't freak out? You just made phone calls and had breakfast meetings, and now you have a new job that pays more? How does that work?" I sat down across from her. "You know what the Army taught me." She looked up. "Don't build something without knowing what holds it up. And if you're the one holding it up, make sure the right people know it." She stared at me. "That's actually kind of useful." "Write it down," I said. "It'll come up again." My mother-in-law asked me last week if I was happy at my new job. I told her yes. She said, "You seem lighter." I thought about that. I thought about the Monday morning with the envelope, the 2 paragraphs, the way my assistant wouldn't look at me. "I think I am," I said. "The truth is," and this is the part I didn't expect, I didn't realize how much of my identity had been tied to a company that never once thought to ask what would happen if I left. I showed up every day for 22 years. I solved problems before anyone knew there was a problem. I built relationships that kept contracts alive and kept paychecks flowing for hundreds of people in that building. and it took them getting desperate to find out that any of it existed. I'm not angry about that anymore. I was, for a while, the first week, driving around running errands at 10 in the morning when I should have been in a meeting. I was furious. Quiet furious, the way my father used to get. The kind of angry you don't talk about because talking about it makes it worse. But fury is a resource. You can burn it down to nothing, or you can run something on it. I ran something on it. Barton & Yee made me a partner last month. My name is on the door. Well, the letterhead. The door is still just the door. But the letterhead matters. The letterhead means something. My son called from Penn State to ask how things were going. I told him things were going well. He said he'd heard I changed jobs and wanted to know what happened. I gave him the short version. He was quiet for a second, and then he said, "So they let you go, and then they had to pay you more to get you back?" "More or less," I said. "That's kind of legendary, Dad." "Don't tell your mother I said this," I said. "But yeah, kind of." He laughed. I laughed. There's one more thing I want to say. Because I've seen the comments on videos like this one, the people who say the hero of the story was reckless or lucky, or that it doesn't usually work out this way. They're not wrong that it doesn't always work out. But here's what I know. I didn't get lucky. I got ready years before I needed to be. Every relationship I built because it was the right way to work, not because I was planning some future leverage. Every piece of documentation I kept because it was my professional record, not as ammunition. Every skill I developed because the work demanded it. The difference between me and someone who gets let go and has nothing to come back with is not intelligence or courage. It's whether you treated your work like it mattered every single day, whether anyone was watching or not. Caldwell stopped seeing me. That's on him. I never stopped building. That's on me. And when the moment came, when the envelope was on the desk and the room was quiet and the audits were pending and the window was closing, I wasn't scrambling to figure out my next move. I already knew it. That's what 22 years of showing up looks like. They tried to replace it with a junior consultant, and 60 days. They got me back, on my terms, at my price, with my name where it belongs. The room didn't go silent when I walked out. The room went silent when they realized what left with me. I've been thinking a lot lately about what actually happened. Not the drama of it. Not the part that makes a good story at a dinner table. The real thing underneath it. Caldwell didn't fire me because he was cruel. He fired me because he genuinely did not know what I did, and I have to sit with the fact that part of that was on me. For 22 years, I made hard things look easy. I solved problems before anyone noticed they existed. I kept relationships warm that nobody else even knew were cold, and I did all of that quietly, because that's how I was raised to work. You don't draw attention to yourself. You just do the job right. But here's what I understand. Now that I didn't then. When you make something invisible, people start to believe it isn't there. That's not a complaint. That's a fact. And facts are only useful if you do something with them. What I did, what I had always done without thinking of it as strategy, was build. I built knowledge nobody could replicate overnight. I built trust with people like Superintendent Decker that took nearly a decade to earn and couldn't be transferred with a phone call. I built a professional record that belonged to me, not to any company server. I did all of that because the work demanded it, because I respected the work, because my father taught me that the only reputation worth having is the one you'd still have if nobody was watching. That's the thing about integrity. It's not a tactic. You can't put it on when it's useful and take it off when it's inconvenient. Caldwell's team found that out the hard way. You can't fake 22 years of relationship capital in 17 days. You either have it or you don't. What I want people to take from my story isn't that I got lucky or that I was smarter than the people who let me go. I wasn't smarter. I was just more prepared. And I was prepared because I had never stopped treating every single day of work like it counted. Like someone was watching. Like the details mattered. Like the person on the other end of the phone was a human being worth my full attention. That's the only reason I had anything to come back with. Renee asked me once, during that first rough week, whether I was scared. I told her no, and she knew I wasn't lying and she wanted to know why. I told her, because I know what I built, and I know it doesn't disappear just because someone signs a piece of paper. What you build in good faith, with real skill, real care, real discipline, that belongs to you. No separation letter touches it. No restructuring erases it. That's not inspiration. That's just how it works. The cause was 22 years of showing up fully. The effect was having somewhere to stand when the ground shifted. And I want my daughter to understand that. I want my son to understand it. Not because I want them to be in the position I was in. I hope they never are. But because the habits that got me through that moment were not formed in crisis. They were formed on ordinary Tuesday mornings, doing the right thing when it was inconvenient, keeping commitments nobody would have noticed me break. That's what integrity actually is. Not the big moment. The 10,000 small ones that made the big moment survivable. I'm a partner now. My name is on the letterhead. And none of it would mean anything if I hadn't spent 2 decades earning the right to put it there,